Tonight, Blanket Cree Nation announces the discovery of human remains at the former Lebret Indian Industrial School, as well as 2,000 other anomalies found by radar. Also,
when is it ever acceptable that we have passengers sitting on aircraft for up to 12 hours, and in some circumstances over 12 hours.
Members of Parliament question airline executives and airport authorities about the travel chaos that erupted during the holidays. Plus, how Saskatchewan families are embracing the outdoors and taking on a challenge to spend 1,000 hours outside in a year.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, January 12th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It was a difficult day for members of the Blanket Cree Nation. They gathered inside the last remaining structure at the site of a former Indian residential school. There, they announced the results of ground-penetrating radar and search of the property. As Adam Hunter reports, the results show one of the first discoveries of human remains on a residential school site in Canada. And a warning, the story has details some may find upsetting.
Our hearts are heavy today. This has been a very emotional journey for all of us.
In November 2021, the Blanket Cree Nation began ground-penetrating radar search at the site of the former Lebret Indian Industrial School, about 75 kilometers northeast of Regina. Last fall, one team member made a disturbing discovery.
It is a jaw bone fragment of a child between the ages of 4 and 6. The bone fragment has been aged to be about 125 years old, which puts us in the first school era. So that brings us back to about 1898. So this is physical evidence, physical proof of an unmarked grave.
The remains of the child were in a teal box in front of Blanket Chief Michael Starr.
This discovery has changed everything. It's changed the things that we're going to do. It's changed our mindset. It's changed our way of life in a way.
The first phase of the search returned 2,000 anomalies, but an anomaly is not considered an unmarked grave site. It could be something else in the ground.
This site and many other sites are crime scenes. Those are crime scenes that must be addressed immediately.
The news conference took place in the school's gymnasium, the only building left from the former school, which closed in 1998, making it one of the last residential schools to do so in the province. The original school was built in 1884. It burned down in 1904. A second school burned in 1932.
We were taken away from our parents, but we learned how to survive. We learned how to forgive. They tried to take our spirits away. They tried to take the Indian out of us. But thank the Creator, we're back here, strong as we'll ever be.
Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations Chief Bobby Cameron is calling on the federal government to build healing centers in communities where there were residential schools. As for the search, the team says it will now start conducting core sampling to run DNA tests to determine if any of the anomalies are graves. Adam Hunter, CBC News, on the Blanket Cree Nation.
The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line provides support to any survivors and others affected. To access emotional and crisis referral services, call 1-866-925-4419. Meanwhile, thousands of First Nations and Inuit people who suffered harm while attending federally run Indian day schools have just a few more hours to submit claims to a national class action lawsuit. A nearly $1.5 billion settlement was signed in 2019. The original deadline was July, but claimants were able to get an extension until tomorrow at midnight. But the chief of the FSIN says that deadline should be scrapped altogether. Bobby Cameron says people who don't have the means to apply online will fall through the cracks. And he says if the deadline is not extended again, there will likely be a lawsuit. Canada has come under criticism from New York-based Human Rights Watch. The group's annual report says more than 20 First Nations remain under water advisories. Eliminating such problems is a long-standing Trudeau government pledge. The report also says Canada leads the G20 in financing fossil fuels projects and that First Nations receive inadequate support to adapt to climate change. There was also criticism for Canada's border agency and lengthy detention of some asylum seekers. The shortage of cold medicine is still an ongoing issue across the province, with no word on when it will end. The Saskatchewan Pharmacy Association says soaring flu and respiratory illness rates are part of the problem. CBC reached out to dozens of pharmacies in Saskatoon and Regina this week. Most told us their shelves are empty, or almost empty, and their supply is unsteady. A pharmacist at the Saskatoon Family Pharmacy says staff there will mix their own Advil medications on site if required.
Our shelves are empty too, so cough and cold products are non-existent. We can't order any, and there's no date that says when they'll be back, so we're just sort of guessing that they'll one day be back. Advil may be back on a shortage situation only for children, and amoxicillin and some antibiotics have been coming in and out. We get some days and we don't get any other days, but still there's pharmacies in the city that can compound like ourselves in the event that there isn't any available.
With more illness and high demand for medicine, the shortage is being felt right across the country. Still, the Provincial Pharmacy Association says there are other alternatives available, like compounding and generic brands. The province says it's in regular contact with Health Canada about these shortages, specifically pediatric meds and adult cough and cold medicine. Several airlines apologized today for what they called unacceptable service during the holiday season. Officials from Air Canada, Sunwing and WestJet all testified at a committee called during the parliamentary break. The airline said bad weather started the problems and had a cascading effect. They promised change. But as Ashley Burke reports, customers say today's testimony is not enough.
Get us home! Get us home! In December, Sunwing passengers were stranded for days in Mexico, fed up to learn that just before midnight, their flight was canceled yet again. It's just one of the chaotic scenes from this holiday travel season that airlines today had to answer for.
The bottom line is, we know we could have done better.
Sunwing, Air Canada and WestJet all questioned by MPs about how they could have gotten it so wrong.
When is it ever acceptable that we have passengers sitting on aircraft for up to 12 hours, and in some circumstances over 12 hours?
That was unacceptable in many, many levels.
The airlines blame bad weather and address complaints that kept people in the dark.
Our guest communication was lacking, so we're going to do a better job of that.
In total, WestJet said it canceled 1,600 flights over the holidays. Sunwing canceled 67, including suspending all service from Saskatchewan.
How did you possibly book travel for Canadians when you did not have crews or planes lined up to service them? This is a catastrophic failure.
In the midst of the storm, with the inability to position, with the inability to recover from the various locations, duty day limitations, we failed to deliver to the level we had expected to.
That response not enough for some travelers who say they felt abandoned.
No, it's certainly not enough. Being demoralized and not answered to, and actually verbally assaulted, and communication breakdown completely to the point where it was impossible to get a hold of anybody. That's completely unacceptable for any business.
The Minister of Transport also questioned by the opposition about why he isn't doing more to protect passengers' rights, including compensation.
The air passenger protection regime that you've created has massive loopholes in it. You could fly a 747 through these things, and we see airlines clearly exploiting those loopholes in order to avoid paying passengers the compensation that they're due.
The regime is quite strong. I know you've had experts tell you that it was stronger, much stronger than the U.S. regime.
Sunwing confirms it's now dealing with 7,000 complaints tied to the holiday travel, and that includes requests for compensation or refunds after some people say they had to pay out of pocket to find their own way home. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
It is a good thing that sidewalk is getting cleared off, because tomorrow it is going to be a melty, slushy mess out there in Regina. The rime ice sure looks pretty, but that will likely go too, even if we get more fog overnight. That's because tomorrow we are getting a big warm up. Ethan will tell you about it after the break in his forecast. Stay with us. Welcome back. A Calgary teenager has turned tragedy into triumph, and now she's helping other Black women and girls. Joe Horwood explains.
Eliora Ogundari was 8 years old when she was diagnosed with sickle cell disease. Because of treatments and chemotherapy, she ended up losing her hair.
I felt like naked almost, because like the thing that was like giving me confidence, I didn't have it anymore.
Her mom Eugenia got to work trying different combinations of products, hoping her hair would grow back.
For girls Eliora's age, then she was 8, the struggle for them is identity, trying to understand why their hair is not as silky as the next person in her class, but then having to lose that hair was a whole different ballgame altogether.
Eventually, Eliora regained her health and her hair. Now 15, she and her mom used the formula that helped her on a line of products for others with specific hair types.
It's a huge part of what makes us, especially physically, but we need to understand the impact it has on us inside.
Adedoyin Omotara sells the Eliora beauty line at both her salon and collective for Black entrepreneurs at Westbrook Mall.
Especially for younger people, they need to understand that there are products that can actually work for our hair, so that they don't start to put toxic products in their hair just to want to look like another Sharon on the street or another Anita on the street, right?
Eliora hopes her products can help other Black girls feel empowered.
Our hair is beautiful the way it is, and it's different in a good way, and any way we style it, it looks beautiful, and it just expands our culture. It really shows like who we are. When I was younger, I kind of wish I had something like this too to make me feel more confident, but I'm happy that I'm doing it now to help other people.
Joe Horwood, CBC News, Calgary.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. The trade and upgrade event is on now.
And our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. Am I going to need rubber boots tomorrow?
Yeah, you may need rubber boots, may need a boat to get around in some of those puddles that may be forming, Sam. We are in for a warm-up across the province, and let's take a look now at why that is. We have a ridge that is building in our upper atmosphere, bringing some warmer air from the United States. As it moves eastward over the next couple of days, it is going to start to sag, so it's not really all that long-lived, and we're going to see some broad troughing move in afterwards. So we're going to return to more seasonal values, not polar air by any means as we head into next week, but just a touch cooler. But for those of you in southwestern and south central Saskatchewan, you've already been enjoying some nicer temperatures these past couple of days as that ridge starts to build in, close to the freezing mark in a place like Maple Creek right now. But you can see that temperature dropping off as you head eastward, and even just north of there, Kindersley sitting around minus 13. It's minus 15 in Yorkton right now. Now, the fog was a bit of an issue once again this morning, creating that picturesque rime ice on trees and whatnot, and we will likely see that again tonight in portions of the province, but the densest of the fog is in Alberta, and of course that is lowering air quality there as well, and that's why statements are in effect. We'll watch to see if any are extended our way, but we could see some visibility dropping, especially in west central Saskatchewan in the wee hours of the morning, close to 2 kilometers in the Kindersley area, and even as we head through the morning tomorrow, mid-morning, we could see some spots looking at close to 0 visibility in Estevan and Regina over to west central Saskatchewan. So keep that in mind if you are heading out on highways. Now, overnight tonight, in addition to fog, we are looking for clearing conditions in the south of that province, south of the province as that ridge moves in. Low pressure system bringing only 1 or 2 centimeters to the very far north of the province. The rest of the north looking at cloud cover for the night tonight. Tomorrow, sun and cloud through the south. Mostly cloudy day, I think, for northern Saskatchewan. We could see that system shift make the fog move out. So that means that tomorrow night there may not be fog in southern and central Saskatchewan, which would be nice. But then our first real kind of big system of 2023 moves in, and it won't be that big. This system isn't that intense, but on Saturday and Sunday, snow for the north part of the province. The central part of the province relatively unscathed, but the south could see a little bit of rain. So with warming temperatures creating those puddles, that rain could add to that, and plus we could see a little bit of freezing rain. Temperatures dropping back down below freezing overnight will likely make for some icy patches heading into the beginning of next week. Moves out by Sunday, and we're left with just mostly cloudy skies to start the week. The north will see the brunt of the snow, close to 10 centimeters in places like La Ronge and Cumberland House and eastern sections of the Churchill region. And in the southern part of the province, again, it is rain. This model might show heavier amounts, possibly in some spots, but it could be enough, again, to make roads icy as temperatures drop below zero as we head into the beginning of next week. But the pressure gradient on this system isn't too deep, so that means that we're not looking at a lot of winds picking up, but the pressure going to remain relatively high enough that we won't see any snow that falls blowing around and reducing visibility. Regina, our next few days with that system moving through, temperatures actually should remain nice as we come out the other side of it. Saskatoon, you will see those nice temperatures as well, but you will remain relatively unscathed from the system, so bringing a little messy weather, Sam, these days.
Rubber boots with ice spikes is what I'm hearing.
I think those are needed, yes.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Stay with us. We have more news after the break. At least 3 people are missing after an explosion at a propane facility 70 kilometers north of Montreal. The fire was not under control as of late afternoon local time, and officials were concerned about safety and environmental risks. Oil or gas could end up in a nearby river. Police are not able to search the scene until it's declared safe by the dozens of firefighters battling the blaze. Fierce fighting is continuing on the ground in Ukraine as troops battle for control of the strategic town of Soledar on the Eastern Front. This video from Ukraine's military shows Ukrainian troops firing on Russian forces attempting to advance through the area. Ukraine says it's holding ground despite heavy fighting in battlefields littered with bodies. It also says more than 100 Russian troops have been killed in the last 24 hours. Russia's mercenary forces fighting in the area declared victory yesterday. Ukraine denies the claims. In an open show of defiance, hundreds of Russian doctors are demanding urgent medical care for a prominent critic of the Kremlin. Alexei Navalny has been repeatedly jailed for challenging Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's currently serving a lengthy sentence that was imposed last March, and his wife says he's seriously ill. Briar Stewart reports.
Dr. Alexander Vanyukov and his family left Russia because of the war. But for months, he's been watching as his country's highest profile political prisoner turns up to court increasingly gaunt and frail.
So he looks skinny with a black shadow under eyes, and nobody could be healthier with this condition.
Alexei Navalny is frequently in solitary confinement. After his lawyer reported that he had a temperature and was being denied medicine, Vanyukov and other doctors felt they needed to write an open letter.
Maybe it could save Navalny's life. Maybe not, but we're just trying.
They called on Russia's President Vladimir Putin for an end to the abuse of Alexei Navalny, demanding that he be seen by civilian doctors. The letter was signed by more than 600 doctors, most of whom are still in Russia and putting themselves and their careers at risk.
Many people are afraid.
Dr. Alexander Polupin says some of his colleagues were too fearful to add their names.
Then more people sign, then less is personal risk for each of us, because they cannot fire all doctors in Russia.
Palupin was one of the doctors who helped to treat Navalny back in 2020 when he was poisoned with a nerve agent and eventually transported to Germany for medical care. After returning to Russia, he was sentenced to years in prison for contempt of court and fraud. Today, his anti-corruption foundation released an audio tape from court, where he asked the judge, why is it that every time getting even the most basic medication turns into an epic quest? Navalny's lawyer believes the doctor's letter helped because his client is now receiving antibiotics. All of his court appearances have been postponed for the rest of the week. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
And Ethan's back with one last look at the weather.
And as mentioned, Sam, fog possible in Regina and through much of south and central Saskatchewan tonight. -8, though, by the time we wake up tomorrow morning in Regina under partly cloudy skies. Wind's going to remain light through the day, already at -3 by the time we hit the noon hour, and we're hoping that that fog will have dissipated by then. In Saskatoon, looking at -12. Again, possible fog tomorrow morning. A little cooler than Regina. We're going to get to around -9. Still not too bad. Wind's nice and light. And of course, with the return of the fog means the return of the rime ice. Sherry Lynn sending us this photo from Blue Heron Ridge. That's just northwest of Prince Albert. And along with that ice, we're getting some beautiful sunrises as well. I think that's going to stick around, Sam, but that ice, I think it's going to go away with the warmth.
I'll take the warmth, Ethan.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
You bet.
And before we go, a Saskatoon mom and her 6-year-old son have pledged to spend 1,000 hours outside this year. It's part of a global challenge. Will McClernon reports.
No matter how cold it is, Erin McCrae and her 6-year-old son Anthony leave the cozy warmth of their home behind for fun outdoor adventures.
You can let go!
The duo wants to spend 1,000 hours outside together this year.
Being outside is the best for everything. Not just exercise, but like mental health and happiness and sunshine, even when it's freezing cold.
People all around the world have accepted the same challenge. It all started with one Michigan family back in 2011. Ginny Urich remembers struggling to keep up with the overwhelming demands of having 3 children under the age of 3. Then she read that kids should spend 3 hours outside daily. She initiated the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge.
1,000 Hours Outside is about bringing back balance to your life between the real and the virtual. The premise is simple, but the impact is profound. Aim for getting outside, be intentional about it throughout the year, and it will change many facets of your life.
Dr. Melissa Lem says there are also health benefits. The family doctor started a nature prescription program here in Canada.
Spending time outside, the research tells us, is one of the best things that we can do for our health. It improves medical conditions from high blood pressure and cholesterol issues to depression and anxiety and even ADHD in children.
It's like this, get a jump!
McCrae says the second Anthony gets outside, he forgets all about the screens. On this day, he wants to show off some tricks. She and her son have tried this challenge in the past. They explored the province looking for new outdoor experiences, but found that recording 1,000 hours in a year wasn't easy. It took them 14 months. She doesn't consider that a failure.
You be kidding me?
I think other people should try it just to get outside and try new things.
McCrae says getting fresh air with her son is what really counts. Will McClernon, CBC News.
And look at those big smiles. That is it for us tonight. Glenn and Ethan are back with more tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.